So, picture this. A woman is standing in her kitchen. It's just a typical Thursday evening. She's stirring a pot on the stove, making her husband's favorite meal.
Right, just a totally normal domestic routine.
Exactly. It's an entirely unremarkable, quiet evening. The kind that just blends into a thousand others exactly like it. But then the phone rings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And before her brain even really comprehends the terrible news coming through the receiver that there has been an accident, that he isn't coming home, her hand just reaches out and she instinctively turns off the stove.
That is just a haunting image.
It really is. Her
Yeah.
body knew the future was over before her conscious mind even caught up to the tragedy.
Usually when we examine road safety, we're looking at skid marks, we look at police tape, speed limits, right-of-way rules.
The mechanics of it.
Right, it's very sterile. We want to categorize the physics of a crash because, well, looking at the math makes a chaotic world feel manageable. But today, we're stepping entirely away from the asphalt.
We are. Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a profoundly moving set of ideas from the book HarGhar Se EkSainik by Syed Abdul Hakim.
And we are focusing exclusively on Chapter 3 today, which is titled, When the Home Breaks.
Yes, strictly chapter 3. And if you are listening right now, I want to invite you to just pause your mental spreadsheet of road safety data. Forget the intersection for a moment. We want to look at the deeply human, everyday reality of what a careless 2-second choice on the road actually does to the architecture of a family.
Because when you think about the immediate aftermath of a tragedy, society's camera lens almost always focuses on the crash site.
Right, the twisted metal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the road only receives the momentum. The actual destruction happens miles away. What happens is the rhythm of a household gets shattered mid-beat. We have to start thinking about a home not just as a physical structure made of bricks, but as this living, breathing ecosystem of habits.
And that is what strikes me so deeply about that detail of the stove. Turning off the burner before she fully processes the words of the police officer. It forces you to realize that the physical house remains completely identical. Like the walls haven't moved an inch.
Right.
The furniture is exactly where it was that morning, but the meaning of every single object in that house is permanently, violently altered overnight.
Everyday objects undergo this really painful transformation. Think about the shoes left by the front door, or a jacket hanging over the back of a dining chair.
Yeah.
Clothes neatly folded in a wardrobe. They instantly stop being functional items and become these silent, painful witnesses to a permanent absence. They are physical markers of a future that has just been abruptly canceled.
It's so heavy.
It is. And there is another incredibly poignant observation in the source text regarding a widow. 3 years after losing her husband, she still occasionally sets 2 cups out for tea.
Wait, really? 3 whole years later?
Yes. She pours the tea, sets the cup down, remembers, and then quietly puts 1 cup back in the cupboard.
I mean, I'm trying to wrap my head around that. Why does our brain do that? Why do we physically refuse to update our habits when we logically, painfully know someone is gone?
Well, it's because muscle memory is deeply embedded in the basal ganglia.
Okay, what's that?
It's the primitive part of our brain that handles automatic routines. But grief, logic, and acceptance, those are processed in the prefrontal cortex.
Ah, I see.
So when you're tired or distracted or just seeking the comfort of a normal routine, your brain defaults to the primitive automatic action. It literally bypasses the grief. The brain hasn't forgotten the loss. It's just temporarily overriding the trauma with the comfort of a deeply ingrained habit.
That makes so much sense. It makes me think of a family structure, not like a clock with synchronized gears, but more like a house with load-bearing walls.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right, because if you suddenly knock out a main load-bearing pillar, the roof doesn't necessarily collapse right that second, but the remaining pillars suddenly have to carry double the weight.
Exactly.
And the pressure slowly, agonizingly cracks the foundation over time.
What's fascinating here is how accurately that describes the surviving parent. They are suddenly carrying the structural weight of the entire household alone.
Yeah.
They're drafted into navigating an absolute labyrinth of grief, not just for themselves, but for their children. I mean, imagine having to answer impossible questions from a 6-year-old.
Like, why isn't he coming home?
Or, did I do something wrong? And you have to answer that while operating on an entirely empty emotional reserve. You are desperately trying to hold the roof of the home up while privately falling apart inside.
And the brutal juxtaposition here is that grief doesn't pause the rent.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't stop the school fees from being due. The monthly mortgage payments, they don't care that your family is shattered. They just automatically draft out of the bank account on the first of the month.
Right. The bureaucracy of life demands ruthless forward motion, even when people inside the house are completely paralyzed. The financial machinery forces the surviving parent to keep acting like everything is normal. They have to return to work, pay the taxes, navigate probate court, buy the groceries.
It's a split existence.
Yes. The psychological toll of that split existence, grieving a catastrophic loss internally while performing mundane financial duties externally, it's immeasurable. The structural integrity of the family is just constantly groaning under that dual weight.
Wait, I'm struggling with something here, though.
What's that?
Well, we're talking heavily about loss and fatalities, but what happens when someone survives? Because human nature dictates that if someone makes it out of a horrible wreck alive, we throw a parade.
We celebrate the survival.
Right. Thank goodness they made it. But looking closely at Chapter 3, the aftermath of surviving with severe, permanent injuries seems to carry a devastation that rivals the loss we just discussed. Why does survival sometimes fracture a home just as deeply? That feels entirely counterintuitive.
I get why it feels that way. We assume survival is the end of the story. But when an injury is permanent, the architecture of the household still shifts. It just shifts in a totally different way. And crucially, it happens without the social permission to grieve.
Ah, no social permission.
Right. The moment those hospital discharge papers are signed, a family member is instantly drafted into being a full-time caregiver.
Without any training.
None. They are abruptly managing complex medication schedules, coordinating endless physical therapy appointments, battling insurance companies on the phone for hours, and they're navigating the profound emotional weather of someone who has just violently lost their independence.
And it feels like society completely looks away from those caregivers. I mean, it's like the neighbors stop bringing casseroles after the first month.
Exactly. The initial outpouring of support dries up.
Because the survivor is still there, so the community assumes the tragedy is over. They don't see the decades of silent, exhausting struggle that follow behind closed doors. Why do we look away from the caregivers?
Well, what caregivers experience is a psychological phenomenon known as ambiguous loss.
Ambiguous loss.
Yes. You are mourning the life you used to share with someone. You're mourning the equal partner you used to have. But that person is still sitting right across the table from you.
Oh, wow. That is incredibly heavy.
And society has absolutely no rituals for this. We have funerals, wakes, organized mourning periods for the dead. We have a communal mechanism to process finality.
Right.
But we don't have a societal mechanism for acknowledging the loss of a shared future when the person is still physically alive.
The sudden transition from romantic partner or equal co-parent into essentially a full-time medical nurse.
It forces a massive identity shift.
Yeah.
And it comes with an immense amount of guilt. Caregivers experience profound burnout, and then they feel tremendous shame for being exhausted or resentful. Because, after all, society tells them they should just be grateful their loved one is still alive.
Yeah, you should just be happy they're here.
Exactly. But the emotional and financial infrastructure of a standard family is simply not designed to absorb this kind of permanent, unrelenting shock. The caregiver carries their own hidden, unacknowledged grief while trying to manage the deep frustration and anger of the injured person.
They're trapped in a perpetual state of emergency that slowly just becomes Tuesday. The oxygen masks drop from the ceiling, and they just never get to take them off.
That's a powerful way to put it.
But as devastating as that is, there's a chilling realization we have to confront next from the text. We've been entirely focused on the sheer collapse of the victim's household. Here's where it gets really interesting. That 2-second mistake on the road didn't just detonate one home, it simultaneously detonated a second home, too. The family of the accused.
This is such a striking insight from Chapter 3. It requires an honest accounting of the ripple effect. And to be clear, acknowledging this second broken home isn't about absolving the driver of moral or legal responsibility.
No, of course not. They made the choice to speed or look at their phone.
And they're fully accountable for the harm they caused. But the consequences of that choice do not stop at the driver's seat. They violently spread to people who made no choice at all.
Picture the morning of the accused spouse. She is going about her ordinary chores, completely unaware that this day is going to permanently rupture her life. Then the police arrive, or she gets the call.
Yeah.
She finds out her partner caused a fatal tragedy. There must be an agonizing whiplash of emotion there. Initial relief that her spouse is physically alive, instantly replaced by the crushing dread of the aftermath.
The dread of the impending legal cases, the terrifying prospect of losing the primary earner to a prison sentence, the sheer financial ruin of legal defense looming over them.
It's all gone in a second.
The entire foundation of her family's safety is ripped away in a single afternoon. She's suddenly thrust into a nightmare she had absolutely no hand in creating.
And think about the children of the driver. They walk into their school the next day, or they go out into the neighborhood, and they are instantly marked. They are known as the child of the person who caused the fatal crash.
The burden on the children of the accused is incredible. They have a buffer. But a working-class family without those resources, they absorb the full catastrophic weight of the impact.
Yeah.
The legal fees drain whatever modest savings they've built. They might have to sell the family car, downsize to a smaller apartment, or take on predatory loans just to mount a basic defense.
And the stress fractures the marriage.
Completely. The home collapses under the sheer unyielding pressure of the system. The road distributes its tragedy blindly based on physics, but society distributes the ability to cope with it based entirely on wealth.
So what does this all mean? When governments and insurance companies try to mathematically solve these tragedies, they step in with payouts.
Well, there's this deeply flawed illusion of compensation. It's the idea that you can write a check, hand it to a grieving family, and somehow balance the cosmic ledger of a lost life.
But the system assigns monetary values to injuries and deaths because it has to function, right? A bureaucratic process must be followed to provide some level of structural support.
Exactly. But the math of compensation is fundamentally broken. It's designed for property damage, for things that can be neatly quantified and replaced.
Exactly. How do you quantify the unquantifiable? I mean, you can pay out a life insurance policy, but how do you assign a monetary value to the years of fine craft lost in a carpenter's permanently crushed hand?
You can't.
What is the exact dollar amount for that loss of identity and purpose?
There isn't one.
Yeah.
What payout accounts for the 40 deeply important conversations a child will never get to have with their deceased parent?
You're right.
What is the insurance check you write to make up for all the high school graduations, the weddings, the quiet Tuesday evenings attended by one parent instead of two?
It's impossible math.
The arithmetic of human life simply does not work that way. Financial compensation is a necessary bandage, sure, but it treats a lost life as a lost asset, completely ignoring the emotional vacuum left behind.
But let's look at the actual economic contagion here, too, because it goes beyond the impossible emotional arithmetic. There is a literal, tangible macroeconomic ripple effect that we completely ignore.
Absolutely.
If a local entrepreneur dies in a collision, the statistics log it as one fatality. Quote, one life lost.
Which is a profound undercounting of the actual damage. If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about the invisible economic virus that spreads from that single point of impact. That entrepreneur dies. Instantly, the 10 employees working for a small business are facing uncertain months or outright job loss.
So now, 10 different families have lost their primary financial safety net. Those 10 workers suddenly have to tighten their belts.
Yep.
They stop spending money at the local grocery store. The grocery store owner sees a sharp drop in revenue over the next few months and realizes he can't afford his daughter's college tuition next semester. The contagion of instability just quietly infects the whole community, jumping from household to household.
And when you multiply this by the sheer scale at which road harm occurs every single day, what you are looking at is a continuous, quiet drain on a whole country's capacity to build its future.
Yeah.
A society is built entirely on the productive capacity and the social fabric of its people. Every preventable death, every permanent injury removes a vital piece of that fabric. It removes a provider, a teacher, a builder, an innovator.
And policy changes can't just fix that.
No, government budget cycles cannot magically replace the human capital that a society bleeds out onto the asphalt day after day. It is an immense compounding deficit.
When you really sit with it all, the tragic absurdity is just staggering. The disparity of effort versus consequence. I mean, it takes exactly 1 second to reach across your shoulder and click a seatbelt into place.
Right.
It takes absolutely $0 to leave your phone in your pocket while you drive.
It is a profound mismatch. The permanent, irreversible weight of what is being risked is balanced against an action that, in the moment, barely registers as a thought to the driver. The road does not care about your intentions. It doesn't care if you were just running late to a meeting or, just quickly checking a text message. It only responds to the physics of the moment. A 2-second choice made in a moment of distraction doesn't just crush the bumper of a car. It permanently alters the entire trajectory of multiple families. It sets off that economic contagion we just talked about.
So, as you move through the world today, just remember that every single other person you share the road with is carrying a home behind them. They are the center of someone else's rhythm.
Mm.
They are a load-bearing pillar in someone else's house. Protecting them isn't about following a traffic rule just to avoid a ticket. It's about recognizing their humanity and the fragile ecosystem they support.
It completely reframes the daily commute. You aren't just navigating around metal boxes on wheels, you are navigating around entirely independent universes. The choices you make behind the wheel are quite literally holding the walls up in someone else's living room.
Such a powerful way to look at it. Before we wrap up this deep dive into Chapter 3, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Look around your own home right now. Look at your shoes sitting by the door. Look at the mug you left on the kitchen counter this morning, or your jacket draped over the back of a chair. All of those ordinary, everyday objects are sitting there right now, holding a quiet, silent assumption that you will return safely to use them again tonight. The next time you get behind the wheel of a car, ask yourself, what is that assumption worth to the people waiting for you?